In 2024 BC, a series of nuclear bombs devastated the ancient land of Sumer. The radioactive clouds killed most of the humans in the area and forced non-human beings to flee. This was known as the War of the Gods, a hidden history that has been kept from us. Over 20,000 ancient Sumerian clay tablets with cuneiform writing were discovered in Iraq over 100 years ago. Scholars like Zecharia Sitchin dedicated their lives to translating these tablets, which tell an incredible story. According to the translations, thousands of years ago, an extraterrestrial race called the Anunnaki came to Earth in search of gold and other minerals to repair their planet's atmosphere. Tired of mining the gold themselves, the Anunnaki genetically engineered primitive humans to be a worker race. In exchange, they taught humans agriculture and construction. The Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki's genetic engineering, which transformed early humans from ape-like creatures. They provide a first-hand record of how this advanced race controlled and manipulated the human population for their own purposes. But the Anunnaki were not the only players in this cosmic drama. There are claims of another race, reptilian beings, who may have vied for dominance over the ancient world and human civilization. David Icke and others have brought to light evidence of these reptilian entities, which some believe were rival factions competing for control of Earth and its human population. According to certain researchers, the Anunnaki's home planet, Nibiru, has an elongated 3,600-year elliptical orbit around our Sun. Some claim it is returning in our era, portending a new interaction with their human descendants on Earth. Sitchin and others have faced attacks, censorship, and even suspicious deaths for pursuing this forbidden knowledge of our ancient astronaut origins. By piecing together the Sumerian artifacts and modern evidence, we may finally shed light on the incredible truth of which extraterrestrial races have been the gods pulling the strings of human civilization. Before presenting a discussion between scholars, I will introduce the scholars and their opinions. I'll start with Michael Sokolov, who despite his youth is a prodigy. In one of his philosophical dissertations, a schoolwork university project I suppose, he establishes for the first time a variation on Chen's explanations of the Anunnaki conflict. I admit that I was surprised by its acuity and that it presents its arguments quite coherently. The story told by the tablets. His dissertation is very long, so I will present it in parts. To begin, I would like to clarify that 4,000 years ago, there would have been no need to write all this down, since if we had lived in that time, we would have been taught it in schools. But 4,000 years of targeted and powerful disinformation campaigns have taken their toll. It will take some effort to clarify these essential elements for you. Ancient people did not have gods in the usual sense of this word. For example, consider the ancient Near East throughout the 2 millennia preceding the birth of Christ. This area was dominated politically by 2 powerful kingdoms, Assyria and Babylon. The language spoken throughout the area was Akkadian. However, these people's popular notions about gods and religion are erroneous. These incorrect notions simply come from a mistranslation of an Akkadian word. The Akkadian cuneiform tablets speak extensively on matters of the ILU. The word ILU has typically been mistranslated as the gods, and this is what gives rise to popular notions about ancient Near Eastern religion. The entire hypothesis that the ancient Near East had remnants of their religion rested on a false translation, the interpretation of the ILU as the god. If this foundation proves false, as I will show below, the entire hypothesis of ancient Near Eastern religion collapses and must be discarded. The premise that ILU means the gods is simply false because this is not what the ancient Akkadian word means. Its literal meaning in Akkadian is the tall ones. This literal meaning is accepted by mainstream linguists, yet they continue to assert that although the literal meaning is the tall ones, what the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians really meant was the gods. What the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians really meant was the gods. Why such insistence? I wonder what evidence this claim is based on. All evidence points to the fact that the literal meaning of ILU is the tall ones, and that this was, in fact, the intended meaning. The ILU were anthropomorphic beings much taller than ordinary humans. In every artistic depiction where ILU are shown alongside ordinary people, the ILU are significantly taller. Based on both ancient evidence and modern analysis to be discussed, I have estimated the height of the ILU at approximately 4.5 meters, 14 to 15 feet. But who were these ILU? How did such beings exist? Were they members of an extinct evolutionary branch of the human species? Perhaps the supposed Homo tertio? Were they the product of genetic anomalies? Could certain plants in ancient times have produced powerful growth hormones capable of creating such giants? The fundamental problem with all these hypotheses is that none adequately explain how such mutations or hormonal effects could lead these beings to be worshipped as gods. Clearly, the ILU must have possessed other remarkable characteristics beyond their height that inspired their divine status. The answer comes from an even older civilization that preceded the Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians. This ancient civilization called their land Shumer, the land of the Watchers. Western scholars later simplified this to Sumer for ease of pronunciation. The Sumerian civilization represents the oldest known human civilization on Earth. It emerged suddenly around 3800 BC in Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and met its demise in 2024 BC when it was destroyed by a deadly radioactive cloud carried by eastern winds from the Sinai Peninsula. According to ancient records, this followed a nuclear conflict, after which several centuries were required for radiation levels to subside. Following Sumer's collapse, Babylon rose to prominence, only to be later challenged by Assyria. Akkad developed as Sumer's northern extension and reached its peak just before Sumer's fall. The culture and language evolved from Sumer and the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian civilizations. ILU also came from Sumer. However, the Sumerians were more specifically descriptive when referring to them. They called them Anunnaki, which in the Sumerian language means those who came from heaven to earth. This gives us a clear answer about who these tall beings were. They were not some fluke of nature caused by human genetic mutations or powerful growth hormones, but rather visitors from outer space. As if to convince us that they knew what they were talking about, the ancient Sumerians left us countless depictions of airplanes, rockets, and other vehicles flying through the atmosphere and space. These depictions are accompanied by detailed technical descriptions of their operation, as well as accurate, detailed astronomical information about the solar system, including all 9 planets known to us today, the most distant of which is completely invisible without powerful telescopes. Asteroids, comets, and distant stars, including many that are not visible from Sumer. The astronomical knowledge passed down by the Sumerians includes the description of the 10th planet of the solar system, which was the home planet of the Anunnaki. Given the accuracy of Sumerian knowledge about the 9 planets, asteroids, comets, and distant stars that we know of, there is no reason to believe that they were wrong about the 10th planet in the solar system. The Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki leave no doubt that these beings were technologically very advanced. They possessed electrical and electronic equipment, including electronic vacuum tubes, semiconductors, and lasers. They were highly advanced in radio communication systems, computers, robots, airplanes, rockets, and artificial satellites. They had nuclear power plants and weapons, and they were beginning to experiment with anti-gravity devices, the result of which was their many megalithic constructions. They had also made great advancements in biomedical technology. Of course, this is to be expected, since such an advanced level of technology is necessary for interplanetary travel. It is not surprising, then, that upon discovering the Sumerian clay tablets in the mid-19th century, the events described in them seemed like magic, which is why these texts were labeled as mythological. The references to the Anunnaki, Dingir, Ilu, and other names by which the space visitors were known were interpreted as theological. But if the Sumerian writings were myths, how is it that they contain correct details about sciences and technologies that we have only recently, with great effort, rediscovered, and others that we have not yet managed to replicate? How is it that they were able to paint and describe devices that accepted dogma does not acknowledge they could have possessed, such as electronic vacuum tubes, airplanes, and rockets? How could they know details about Uranus and Neptune that we have only recently rediscovered with the Voyager 2 mission? The dogma accepted as history provides no answers, and it is time to discard it. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, it would be wise to start believing the Sumerians and what they recorded about the Anunnaki. There is another reason why the Anunnaki were thought of as gods. They were our creators. According to the Sumerian archives, the Anunnaki first landed on Earth approximately 450,000 years ago, at a time when Earth's evolution was at the stage of early hominids. The Anunnaki came to Earth not to play gods, but for a more practical reason: to collect minerals for use on their home planet. The difficulty of mining soon became too great for them, so they conceived the idea of creating a slave workforce. The ruler of their home planet, Anu, gave the order to his son Enki, who led Earth's mission as the chief genetic scientist, to engineer, through genetic manipulation, a new being, the worker slave. This being had to be advanced enough to perform complex tasks, more capable than any existing animals, but still inferior to the Anunnaki themselves, so they could justify not treating them as legal persons and instead using them as slaves. Enki's solution was to create a genetic hybrid between terrestrial hominids and the Anunnaki. After many failed experiments recounted in detail in the Sumerian epic of Atrahasis, they finally succeeded. The result was Homo sapiens. The Anunnaki leaders found these new beings satisfactory and put them to work in mines and other parts of their colonies, which included ancient Mesopotamia. The first humans worked for their gods. The Semitic word avod, often interpreted today as worship, literally means to work for. That was the beginning of the relationship between humans and gods. The first men did not worship their gods, they worked for them. How then did humans evolve from a slave race to a civilization? This happened thanks to Enki. While Enki's assignment was to create a race of slaves, in his heart he desired more. He wanted to play God, not just in creating a being in his physical image, but one resembling him mentally, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, including all psychic abilities. And this is what he did. The other Anunnaki leaders were at first enraged and tried to destroy Enki's creation. It happened that the last ice age was about to end at that time, and a great flood swept across the earth. It was a completely natural event, but the Anunnaki leader Enlil decided to use it to rid himself of Enki's creation. Enki, however, foiled the plan by saving a group of humans led by one who came to be known as Noah. The transformation of the animal-like slaves into the intelligent, emotional, and moral beings we call humans was activated by Enki, who granted the gift of love to his creatures. This account, heavily distorted, appears in the Bible. The serpent Nahash, in the original Hebrew, a word with multiple meanings, who seduced Adam and Eve into sin, was Enki. The fruit they ate was not an apple or any physical fruit. The term used carries a sexual connotation. Adam and Eve did not eat fruit, they made love. Specifically, they experienced love as an emotional act, rather than merely engaging in reproduction. As everyone knows, human sexuality differs strikingly from that of any other species. Animals procreate, humans make love. This distinction stems from what Lord Enki awakened in that first human couple in Eden, the original Sumerian term from which the biblical Eden was derived. Just as Enki had predicted and planned, the act of lovemaking, understood in ancient Near Eastern languages, became a trigger that unlocked humanity's highest spiritual potential: love. A man and woman were no longer mere animals. They had become moral beings, endowed with the capacity to know and love. All of this was thanks to Lord Enki. His half-sister, occasional lover, and partner in the creation of humanity, Lady Ninti, also called Ninhursag or Mami by the Sumerians, meaning mother of all, played a crucial role. The word for mother, mama, mommy, or similar, appears in nearly every language on Earth. Though the other Anunnaki, including Enlil, were initially furious, they eventually accepted Enki's deed. They granted humans the foundations of civilization and allowed them to live alongside them. Humans were divided into three regions: Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, the three oldest human civilizations. The Anunnaki kept the fourth region, Tilman, their spaceport, for themselves. To this day, this area bears the name of an Anunnaki leader, Sin. We know it as the Sinai Peninsula, named after the ancient Semitic moon god Sin. Sin ruled the region in semi-retirement, while his son Shamash, from the Akkadian words Shem and Esh, meaning rocket and fire, wore his eagle-like uniform and wrist-mounted winged devices resembling watches. Shamash commanded the daily operations of the spaceport. These were the beings our ancestors knew as gods. They were not gods in the religious sense, and there was no religion as such. The gods were not a matter of belief. People lived side by side with them in cities built by human workers under the direction of Anunnaki architects and engineers. People could see and hear their gods, and if they were privileged, they could even touch them. Some particularly privileged humans managed to have intimate relations with them. There was certainly no need to believe in them. The gods were to the ancients what our presidents, parliamentarians, dictators, or other government officials are to us today. They made laws that told people what to do, and while people might have liked or hated them, no one doubted their existence. We can see and hear the president on television. The Anunnaki certainly also had radio and television. Some people get the privilege of shaking a leader's hand, and occasionally someone even becomes intimate with a powerful figure. This is exactly what the gods were to our ancestors. The so-called temples were literally houses of gods, filled with technological artifacts, just as our homes are filled with technology today, which would have seemed magical to ancient people. And whenever the gods traveled through the air, they always used aircraft, not magic or broomsticks. The ancient nuclear war of the gods, humanity's forgotten apocalypse, and the hidden battle for Earth. The staggering narrative of an ancient nuclear conflict between the Anunnaki and Reptilian gods, as preserved in Sumerian cuneiform tablets and pieced together by researchers like Zecharia Sitchin, David Icke, and Michael Sokolov, presents a radical reinterpretation of human history, one that challenges the very foundations of archaeology, theology, and mainstream science. According to these accounts, around 2024 BC, a cataclysmic war erupted in the skies and lands of Mesopotamia, culminating in the use of nuclear weapons that reduced Sumer to a radioactive wasteland. This was not a war of men, but of gods, extraterrestrial overlords who had ruled over humanity for millennia before turning their advanced weaponry against each other. The Sumerian testimony, a civilization built by the Anunnaki. The Sumerian tablets describe the Anunnaki, or Aniki, as referred to in some translations, as towering beings who descended from the heavens, specifically from a rogue planet called Nibiru, which orbits our sun every 3,600 years. These entities, standing between 12 to 15 feet tall, were not deities in the spiritual sense, but highly advanced extraterrestrials who possessed technology indistinguishable from magic. They genetically engineered Homo sapiens from primitive hominids to serve as a slave race, mining Earth's gold to stabilize Nibiru's failing atmosphere. However, the Anunnaki were not alone in their dominion over Earth. Competing factions, including reptilian entities, possibly the same as the Dragon Kings of global mythologies, vied for control. The Sumerian records, corroborated by later Babylonian and Assyrian texts, suggest that this power struggle escalated into open warfare. The final confrontation allegedly took place in the Sinai Peninsula, where nuclear or similarly devastating weapons were deployed, resulting in the infamous deadly cloud that wiped out Sumer and forced the surviving Anunnaki to flee. The evidence of ancient atomic warfare. Skeptics dismiss these claims as myth, but physical evidence suggests otherwise. The radioactive ruins of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. In the Indus Valley, archaeologists discovered skeletal remains with radiation levels far exceeding natural background levels, some fused into glass-like formations, a phenomenon consistent with extreme heat, such as that from a nuclear blast. The vitrified cities of the ancient Near East, sites like Sodom and Gomorrah, if interpreted through an archaeological lens, show signs of sudden, intense destruction, with stone structures melted into glass, something only achievable at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, akin to modern thermonuclear explosions. The anomalous craters of the Sahara and Arabia, unexplained circular depressions such as the Gebel Kamel crater in Egypt, exhibit characteristics of high-energy impacts, yet no meteoric evidence has been found. Could these be the scars of ancient energy weapons? The reptilian factor, a hidden enemy? While the Anunnaki are central to the Sumerian narrative, alternative researchers like David Icke propose that another faction, reptilian humanoids, played a key role in this cosmic war. Ancient cultures worldwide, from the Nagas of India to the serpent people of Mesoamerica, speak of serpentine beings who once ruled over humanity. Some interpretations suggest these reptilians were either rivals of the Anunnaki or a separate caste within their hierarchy. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, fallen angels who interbred with humans, while Babylonian texts speak of Tiamat, the dragon goddess slain by Marduk, an Anunnaki leader. Could these legends be distorted accounts of a brutal extraterrestrial civil war? If so, the nuclear destruction of Sumer may have been the climax of this conflict, an event so traumatic that it was buried beneath layers of myth and religious allegory. The cover-up. Why has this history been erased? If such a war truly occurred, why is there no mainstream acknowledgement? The answer lies in the systematic suppression of ancient knowledge, the burning of libraries, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the sacking of Babylonian archives, and the Catholic Church's purging of heretical texts, like those of the Gnostics, erased much of humanity's true history. The misinterpretation of myth. Academics have long dismissed ancient accounts as primitive superstition, ignoring the precise astronomical, technological, and geopolitical details embedded within them. Modern disinformation. Researchers like Sitchin faced ridicule, censorship, and even suspicious deaths. The scientific establishment refuses to entertain the possibility of pre-human advanced civilizations, despite mounting anomalies. The Return of Nibiru. Are the Anunnaki coming back? One of the most chilling aspects of this narrative is the cyclical return of Nibiru. Ancient texts suggest that the Anunnaki left with a promise, or threat, to return. Some researchers believe that the planet's 3,600-year orbit aligns with major upheavals in human history, the fall of Sumer, the Bronze Age collapse, and perhaps even our near future. If Nibiru is real and approaching, as some astronomers controversially claim, then humanity may soon face a reckoning with its creators. Will they come as saviors, slavers, or conquerors? And if the reptilian faction still exists, are they already among us, manipulating world events from the shadows? Conclusion: Awakening to the Forbidden Past. The story of the Anunnaki-Reptilian War is more than an ancient legend. It is a suppressed history that redefines human origins, spirituality, and destiny. If true, it means humanity was engineered as a hybrid slave race, meaning our evolution was directed, not accidental. Advanced civilizations existed before recorded history, only to be destroyed in a cosmic power struggle. The gods of myth were real beings, and their conflicts shaped our world. We are not alone, and never have been. The radioactive ruins, the genetic anomalies in our DNA, and the persistent global myths of gods and dragons all point to a forgotten epoch of interstellar warfare. As we uncover more archaeological and genetic evidence, the walls of conventional history crumble. The question is no longer if such events occurred, but when humanity will awaken to their implications. The Anunnaki may return, the reptilian influence may still linger, and the weapons that once scorched the earth could be used again. The only way to prevent history from repeating is to remember it. The truth is buried, but it is not dead. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Check out more videos on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.